according to Thomas Friedman's article, The First Law of Petropolitics. He dealt with, though omitting some evidence, what he believed was the first law of acquiring global power by using petroleum as a vehicle to do so. Friedman will conclude, based on empirical studies, that the price of oil and the pace of freedom always move inversely, meaning societies with an economy tied to oil will less likely be able to sustain democratic rule. In petrostates, the repression effect is caused when an overabundance of oil revenues allows governments to spend excessively on police, security, and military to quell democratic movements. Excuse me. The previous segues into what I'd surmise to be the second law of petropolitics, the, the, the weaponizing of petroleum to gain economic growth whilst adversely affecting the economies of other nations. Moreover, Petrolist states weaponizing oil was done after the Yom Kippur War between Egypt, Syria, Israel, which began in 1973, I believe. Could be wrong, but I'll look it up just to make sure I'm right. Anyway, during that time, OPEC would announce substantial reductions in their oil production until the total withdrawal of Israeli forces will commence in all Arab territories. At the same time, OPEC would fully embargo the United States and other nations such as the Netherlands. OPEC basically weaponized oil supplies in order to force powerful countries to conform to the oil cartel's political demands. Now, juxtaposing the second law of petropolitics with China's unrestricted warfare, hell, it would be quixotic to believe that the CCP is not, to an extent, implementing the weaponization of oil to economically affect prominent global actors, causing a power vacuum, a power vacuum that could help China become the non-pareil global power. Now, this is some scary shit now, but this ain't fantasy. This is something that could happen. Keeping the latter in mind, you must keep it in mind. But anyway, keeping the latter in mind, unrestricted warfare talks about using a long range of strategies that are unorthodox because it does not necessarily include military action. However, it does consist of economic, technological, trade, biowarfare, propaganda, and every other aspect, every other facet of an adversary's culture. Additionally, this kind of warfare blurs the lines between soldier and civilian and creates an invisibly vast battlefield, meaning that hell, the battlefield could be anywhere, anything, or at any given time. Furthermore, when you understand how minerals such as petroleum are linked to political and economic power, you'll begin to ascertain why the CCP strategy is tied to oil, and that China's relationship with OPEC is not it's not something that happened by happenstance, but rather it's auspicious and very calculated. Remember, OPEC has employed strategies to weaken the U.S. economy. Hell, like I said, all you have to do is harken back to the Yom Kippur War. It is important to realize the second law of petropolitics supports the concept the friend of my enemy is also my enemy. For example, OPEC controls 70%, well, approximately 70% of the world's oil, and it is widely assumed that they secretly reserve extra barrels for nations the organization is friendly with, like Russia, which is a JMMC member, and China. And when you put that together, you got to understand that both of these nations are close allies. Additionally, speaking of allies, Iraq and Iran, two members of OPEC, have signed on to China's One Belt, One Road program. Iraq and Iran have immense underdeveloped oil and gas reserves, which 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 makes their signing to the Chinese program a geopolitical cornerstone for China. Furthermore, the CCP was always aware that petrolist states with vast oil reserves like Iraq, Iran, and Saudi Arabia have much ire for the United States, much like much like China. Some could suppose Wilsonism of the United States contributed to this. Thus, it begs the question: is China using Arab chagrin for the United States as leverage to gain global power? Additionally, the second law of petropolitics can be analyzed by what political science called the game theory. China's unfair trade practices led to the China-U.S. trade war, and I believe it was 2016. President President Trump's actions led China to impose tariffs on U.S. soybeans, mitigate oil purchases from the United States, and cause them to find other oil suppliers. Also, the trade war has had an unpleasant effect on the U.S. oil industry, This makes OPEC Plus a major winner in the trade war because places like Saudi Arabia and Russia could could very well become suppliers of oil to countries that the United States once supplied. Whew, it's hot. But anyway, furthermore, the latter and the combination of COVID-19 and OPEC's oil BPD cut can can lead to higher oil prices for the U.S. consumers, and that could that could be bad news for Trump and his reelection. Now, Sino-African geopolitical relations are, for the time being, good. However, U.S. African relations are fickle at best. There are no better examples than OPEC members in Africa for starters. Algeria. Algeria has had a complex relationship with the United States. Some presidential administrations would acknowledge the country's independence, while some presidents still believe the nation belongs to France. Conversely, China has forced Sino-Algeria relations to amass oil and energy reserves from the country by having Algeria join One Belt, One Road initiative. Uh, additionally, additionally, some say that the Trump administration indirectly played a part in that. Also, Algeria is another example. Algeria is an example of what they call well, at least what Friedman called Dutch disease, or the paradox of plenty. This explains China's pragmatic or quid pro quo, if you will, relationship with the country. The CCP has thrown major financial support behind sorry, behind Angola's infrastructure, telecommunications, health, and education in order to receive a percentage of the country's oil blocks and other resources, but much more so to receive a percentage of the country's oil. Also, much like the former nation, Angola has signed onto the One Belt, One Road initiative. Notably, just to get through all the rigmarole real quick. Um, Notably, all 13 OPEC members are also a part of China's One Belt, One Road initiative. All of them, all 13 of them. For China, this is a strategic play for acquiring geopolitical power. Furthermore, it also fulfills the CCP's notion of unrestricted warfare. Not only is China buying nuclear firms in Europe and in the United States to secure a future position of being a leading nuclear titan, China is also using the One Belt, One Road initiative to buy oil blocks from OPEC nations and strategically build pipelines to make it easier for the People's Republic of China to obtain petroleum. Now, the looming question is, how is China doing this so successfully? Well, that is a very good question. I'm glad you asked. The answer is predatory lending. See, China's banks, such as the China Development Bank and Export-Import Bank of China, gives credit lines to One Belt, One Road initiative countries that are so high with astronomical percentage rates. Countries are unable to pay the Chinese government back. Thus, countries are forced to relinquish oil, other energy sources, ports, and land to the Chinese government. By this and the fact that every member of OPEC is a part of China's initiative, makes China an ipso facto influencer on global economics. In conclusion, Western countries must understand the tactical gains China has and is making via the One Belt, One Road initiative. And Western nations must also devise a response to China's palpable quest for world domination. The CCP strategy is applicable to unrestricted warfare and the Second Law of Petropolitics. It is important to remember. This is very important. Some OPEC and OBOR members have diplomatic relations with Western civilizations. However, that could cause relations to weaken. See, these countries could get caught up in the US-China trade war. Now, if these countries choose China, the US could levy tariffs, and that could affect Western gas prices. Or if these nations choose China, choose the US, China could call in loans that could bankrupt nations. Thus, OPEC and OBOR members are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now, sooner or later, OPEC and OBOR members are going to have to pick a side. Because how can these nations be China's friend and America's friend too? How could the friend of my enemy not be my enemy as well? As of now, China's influence on OPEC and WTO, plus the creation of OBOR puts China on a trajectory of being a superpower. Although, although many economists opine the contrary. However, many miss the petropolitics and predatory lending involved in the CCP's strategy that can give China's imaginary superpower status some verisimilitude. Unquestionably, China has is implementing the second law of petropolitics. They are they are concurrently weaponizing petroleum and globally causing an economic conundrum. Thus, what are how will Western civilizations respond to China's strategy? This isn't the only strategy, but we're talking about the second law of petropolitics and how 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 that can tie into China's strategy to become a superpower.